Broadcasting live and worldwide. Here's Brody Brazil.
Ah, yes, baseball season is officially here. I know it doesn't completely feel like that yet because the A's first two games are overseas in Tokyo, but don't worry, soon enough, March 28th, we'll have baseball at the Coliseum. It's kind of the official kickoff to summer, and from there, I guarantee you will not look back. But as for Oakland starting off this 2019 campaign, there's a lot of questions because when you have a season as good as they did last year, 97 wins in 2018, makes you wonder, can they do it again? What will help them this year? What are some things they're going to have to overcome all over again? And that is the topic of this video. What we know about the A's and what we don't know. I've picked out 8 different things here, and I'll begin with probably the biggest question mark surrounding this team. We don't know how the starting rotation is going to look in the early portions of this season. But I do know that at some point, they're going to need every single arm that they have right now under contract. Almost to the extent that layers of starters are going to be needed this season. And I'm not all doom and gloom here. I hate to think that anybody's going to miss time with an injury or a sore arm or anything like that. But, I mean, take a look at last season alone. The A's had 11 different pitchers make at least 7 different starts. They had 13 different starters, but in reality, they had 15 total pitchers make a start last season, including the opener, Liam Hendricks, by the way. So they needed a total team effort just from the rotation itself. And I don't predict a whole lot being different for the A's, or to be honest, most teams across Major League Baseball this season. There is an arm epidemic or pandemic. I always get those two confused. There's an arm issue across Major League Baseball, whether it's the exertion by starting pitchers, they're throwing too hard every single pitch, or maybe what's not happening on their off days with routines and not throwing enough or too much. Who knows the answer? But you know how many arms have been injured across baseball in the last 10 years alone. It's a crazy stat. It just lets you know that the A's are going to need everybody. So going back to topic here, in trying to figure out who's going to be a part of the starting rotation on, well, the 28th, Oakland opening day, it doesn't even really matter to me because those 5 guys are going to have to be backed up by another 5 guys that will all get their chances in time. And there's a lot of names, and I don't mean to be negative about the pitching rotation when I say it's a question mark, but there's a lot of players, I think, with great potential that I hope can reach that potential and sustain that potential for long periods of time this season. Guys like Bassett, Blackburn, Triggs, Brooks, and so on. There's a lot of options, and that's a good thing. Hopefully, most of these options can work out in a beneficial way for the A's. But again, going back to what I do know about the rotation, everybody's going to get their opportunity to shine, and the A's are going to need all of it. All right, let's move on to number 2. Jesus Lúzardo, speaking of the pitching rotation, I know he's going to get his chance this season. That's what I do know. What I don't know is how much and when and where he gets used. But let me hop back to something I do know. It's all going to be super strategic. The A's are not going to take too many chances with their young southpaw. They realize that he has been brought up pretty quickly through the minor leagues, but that he's also ready for this, but that they also cannot afford to get this wrong. You want to bring somebody in when they're ready, when they're not going to have confidence issues, a ton of struggles. It's natural to struggle a little bit, right? This is Major League Baseball. It's not the easiest thing in the world, but they know his talent and they want to make sure that he will be eased in the right way. Bob Melvin used the word spoon-fed in how they're going to handle Jesus Lúzardo, and I think that's the best way. Plenty of time here. You know he's going to be around for a while. You want to use him the right way. Number 3, here's another thing I don't know, what 2019 holds for Franklin Barreto. Now, Franklin has come up and down and up and down and really has yet to have a sustained opportunity to be a big league baseball player. Don't get me wrong, he's had enough chances, and he's never really taken one, grabbed it, and ran away with it. Otherwise, they'd have a hard time sending him back down to the minor leagues. But the bottom line is here, there's always been something that calls him up and then something that pushes him out of the lineup or sends him back down to AAA. The one thing I do know about Franklin is that the last thing you want is him up at the major league level, not playing, simply watching games. That does not do anybody any good. He needs to continue playing if he's not going to get the opportunity in the show. So again, I don't know what this season holds for Franklin Barreto. More on him in a second. I do know, though, that acquiring Jurickson Profar in Oakland makes a ton of sense for this team for a lot of reasons. Number one, yeah, he's going to start off playing second base, but he can also play third. In fact, with the Rangers, he played more third and short than he did even at second base. I think he even played more first base for Texas than he did as a second baseman. But he can also play left field. Profar is also a switch hitter. So you're not exactly tied into a guy who only plays second base. Now, with Jed Lowry on the team last season, and I wish him luck in his brand new adventure with the Mets, but Jed Lowry was a guy that pretty much was going to play second base for you. He filled in at third for Chapman, also was a switch hitter, loved Jed. But you couldn't really move Jed around if Franklin was ready. In this case, with Jurickson Profar, he can play elsewhere if that's what you want him to do, if Barreto is in fact ready to take over that second base spot. So I do know that Franklin can come up and stay up. There's going to be some room for him, and there's also going to be a spot for Jurickson Profar as a utility guy, the multitude of other places he can play, plus being a switch hitter, that's only going to help him. Let's move on to number 4. I truly don't know who's going to get the most playing time in left field. But I do know, again, it is so nice for Bob Melvin to have a handful of options, whether it's Grossman or Canna or Pinder. I mean, you can basically play the hot hand out there. And I feel like center field and right field being so established, you're not necessarily going to mess with those positions. But if it is Laureano, the everyday center fielder, and Piscotty every day in right field, those guys are going to need some breaks here and there. So you've got plenty of outfield options for the green and gold. But as for left field, it seems like one of those spots that might be open to start with. You hope that somebody grabs it and gets it a majority of the time. That's only going to benefit the team. But you hope that that competition pushes other players so that, you know, everybody's striving to get more at-bats, more innings out there in left field. That's kind of the position that everybody is shooting for. All right, let's move on to number 5. I don't know how you can top Gold Glove seasons for Matt Olson and Matt Chapman. I don't know what more they're going to do defensively for the green and gold in 2019 than they did in 2018. If I put together a highlight reel of all the great scoops by Ole and all the great dives and throws, you know, going into the tarp by Chappie, I mean, we would spend a half hour at least here on YouTube watching those clips. But I do know that Olson and Chapman, they're just going to have to continue to be leaders of this team. So again, I don't know how you can top what they did last year, but I do know that those guys and their roles as leaders, it's still very important. That's probably the most important thing, rather than trying to top what they did last year. Clearly, they're corner infielders, like I said, so that helps out the stability. By the way, the A's infield last year, including Marcus Semien, let's not take him or leave him out of this equation. He was an everyday player at short. Jed Lowry played a ton of games at second base. And so you're hoping for regularity on the infield, cornered by your anchors at first and at third, but also the heart of the order hitting for the A's, right? Chapman and Olson are big parts of that as well. Once Chapman really started to feel it with the bat, Bob Melvin moved him up and put him in that 2-hole. And clearly KD is your cleanup hitter. And Olson used to hit a lot of times 5th, right behind Chris Davis. Now maybe you move Olson up into the 3-hole, or maybe that's a Piscotty opportunity to hit 3rd, or somebody else hits 3rd. But look, clearly the two Matts, Olson and Chapman, they are big parts defensively. They are huge parts offensively for the A's as the meat in the heart of the order. Let's move on to number 6 here. I do not know that the A's have the same caliber of bullpen that they built up to last season? Of course they don't, because they added to it last year as it went on. It didn't start out being one of the most noteworthy bullpens in all of Major League Baseball. A lot of the acquisitions made it that way, and a lot of the players standing out also made it that way. Blake Treinen and Lou Trevino clearly established the very back end of the bullpen, and then the A's were able to add domino pieces right in front of them. But again, I don't know if they're going to have that same caliber of bullpen to start off with. What I do know are those two players I just mentioned, Lou Trevino and Blake Treinen. This is about as solid as it gets. Trevino, I talked to him at spring training, clearly revisits the second half of last season where a lot of things were at play. It was his first time around in the big leagues. Was it fatigue? Was it overall struggles? Forget excuses. Let's just say what it was. It was struggles for him. He knows that. He's looking forward to averting that. He's looking forward to correcting that and not repeating that this year. If you can have Trevino's nasty stuff in the 8th and Treinen's nasty stuff in the 9th, I mean, and those guys, by the way, are all flexible to add a couple more outs for every outing. I mean, you could put, Trevino in there early 7th, have him get a couple outs, have him get you halfway through the 8th, and then have Treinen come in for a 4 or 5 out save. It's not unheard of, and if you look at the way that they did it last season, that's not going to tire anybody out. Those are big dudes. Those are durable dudes at the back end of your bullpen. So again, I do know the A's have one of the best back ends of the bullpen across Major League Baseball with Trevino setting up Treinen. Oakland had the best record in one-run games in all of baseball last season. Part of that's from all the homers they hit, but the big part is that they were able to hold and hang on to very slim leads that they had because their bullpen was so good. Number 7 here of 8, I do not know how this catching situation goes. I do like the fact that there's an aspect of competition for playing time. And even last year, Jonathan Lucroy was brought in late, in fact, only 19 days before opening day. It was crazy to think that the A's didn't have him locked in as early as other teams had their backstops. But Lucroy came in, he took over, veteran presence. I mean, he is going to be missed. No matter how good the A's catchers can do this season, Jonathan Lucroy is going to be missed to a certain extent because he came in and did one bang-up job. But Sean Murphy, sooner than later, is going to get an opportunity. Now, he hasn't played much AAA baseball. In fact, I think at the end of last year, just a handful of games. And I personally think coming up to the big leagues as a position player, the hardest way to do it is as a catcher. And no disrespect to an outfielder. I'm not saying that they're not working hard out there in the field or they don't have to establish skills in the field. I'm just saying that behind the plate and part of calling a game and that type of durability and working with pitchers on a day-to-day basis and bullpen pitchers, and you understand where I'm going with this, it's going to be a little bit harder for Murphy to come up and debut like he wants to versus a position player. So I really do feel like you need to take your time with Sean Murphy. Maybe he's ready right now. In fact, I've heard that report already. In a lot of ways, he'd already be ready to take this job. But again, almost in the same way with Jesus Lúzardo, he was a higher draft pick. The A's are very confident in his future. You don't want to sacrifice that for rushing him, let's say in this season, too early on. And again, just going to the question marks of catching. Obviously, with Hundley, you have some veteran experience, but a guy that hasn't been playing a ton of full seasons as of late. The same thing was with Chris Herman, who's injured. Not a lot of full seasons in the last few. And then with Josh Phegley, the returning A's catcher, again, there's a player that has not been a full-time catcher a lot. So you don't have a guy that's been doing the full-time catching as of recent seasons to come in and just run away with this and take it away. So I don't know how the catching situation goes, but I do like the aspect of competition for time and multiple options, and I do like the fact that Sean Murphy, at some point, when the A's think he's ready, he's going to get a chance to show what he's all about for the future. And then last but not least here, I don't know how easy it's going to be for the A's to get back to 97 wins. You think about 97 wins. That was more victories than any team in the National League. Yeah, I know the A's are in the American League, duh. But I'm just saying here, Oakland had more wins than every team in the regular season last year of the National League. So I don't know how easy it is to top that. But I do know that this A's team has now established itself. They're relevant again. There's no question in my mind. What they did last year, not a fluke at all. This is the start of something that they can sustain. And I don't think anybody wants to be taking their foot off the gas pedal at this point. I do feel like as long as Oakland can add some more pieces to the puzzle, as well as maintain their strong points, they're going to be in the playoffs for a second straight season. They need some more players to step up. The Laureanos. When I say step up, really, I'm talking about just pure evolution. Show us the next chapter of your career. Excited to see a lot of players of that ilk do their thing this year. But again, I really feel like this is the start of a wave for the green and gold. This is not them regressing, and there might be some steps back this season. Don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about big picture. I just mean at certain points. It's not easy. It wasn't easy last year. Remember, we went all the way from opening day until June 15th before this team really took off. So don't necessarily judge it right out of the gate as opposed to how hot they finished last season. But just know what they showed you last year, they sustained it long enough. They clearly proved that they're capable of this, and that, like I said, if they can build on this, it's going to be pretty crazy to see where they go. It's a tough AL West. Obviously, the Astros in this division. It's a tough American League if you're trying to win the wild card, a wild card spot, I should say. The A's know obviously what that was all about last time around, but I think they're fully capable of having a really, really good follow-up season to 97 wins. Hey, that does it for this YouTube video and this episode of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed 8 things that we know about the A's and also some things we don't know about this team entering 2019. Hit me up on Twitter if you like. I'm also pumping out as much good stuff as I can on Instagram on a pretty regular basis, so make sure you follow me over there, as well as this YouTube channel. I'd love it if you've stuck around this long, if you would subscribe. I truly appreciate that. I'll give you some more great stuff to look at in the future. Also, the podcast. I put those out on a pretty regular basis, so thank you if you have been listening to this instead of just watching the video. That does it for this time. Until the next time around, I'm Brody Brazil, and yes, that is my real name.